The stars above Violia never moved. They shone in perfect patterns, controlled by ancient machines older than memory. Below them stood cities made of crystal and steel, built for beings far larger than planets ever expected. Among those towering cities walked Caliph. She was called many names across the galaxy: World-Bearer, Stormwalker, Living Colossus. Her body rose higher than the tallest spires, and when she moved, the ground answered her steps with quiet respect. Her people believed she was the greatest achievement of their species. Caliph had everything. She commanded fleets that crossed star systems in days. She held knowledge gathered over thousands of years. When enemies appeared, they surrendered without battle. When councils spoke, they waited for her approval. Yet inside Caliph, there was only silence. She did not remember when it began. Perhaps after her first great victory, or maybe after the last war ended too easily. Satisfaction was supposed to arrive with success. That was what her people taught. But no matter how much she achieved, something remained missing. At night, when the cities slept, Caliph stood alone on the edge of the high plains. She looked at the stars and felt nothing looking back at her. No joy. No peace. Only a heavy emptiness. Her people thought she was calm, wise, complete. They were wrong. One cycle, the Galactic Council announced the arrival of a new species, a young race from a small blue planet called Earth. They were weak compared to others, short-lived, emotion-driven, still struggling to leave their home system. Most species ignored them. Caliph did too. Another minor race, she said without interest. Observe them, learn their limits. Humans were brought to research zones across the Alliance, not as equals but as subjects. Caliph allowed it without thought. Her mind was too busy trying to understand the hollow space inside her chest. Days passed, then weeks. One human was assigned to her sector, a single individual chosen because he showed unusual calm under pressure. His name was Eli Carter. When Caliph first saw him, she almost ordered him removed. He stood inside the massive chamber, surrounded by machines taller than mountains. Guards watched him closely. His hands trembled slightly, but his eyes stayed focused. "So small," Caliph said, her voice echoing like distant thunder. "How does such a creature survive the universe?" Eli swallowed. Fear was there, but he did not hide it. "We survive each other," he answered. The room froze. No one spoke to Caliph without permission. No one answered her questions with questions of their own. The guards waited for her anger. But Caliph felt something unexpected. Curiosity. She leaned closer, lowering herself so one massive eye aligned with the human. He did not run. "You are not afraid?" she asked. "I am," Eli said honestly, "but being afraid doesn't mean being silent." Something shifted inside her, just a little. Caliph straightened. "You will remain here," she decided. "You will speak when asked." Eli nodded, relieved but confused. As the cycle ended, Caliph returned to the plains. The stars still did not move. The emptiness still remained. But for the first time in centuries, a thought followed her into the silence. The human had not bowed. He had not praised her power. He had simply spoken. And somehow, that small act echoed louder than all her victories. Far away, on a world that did not yet know her name, humanity had taken its first quiet step toward changing a giant. The chamber where the human stayed was never silent. Machines hummed softly. Light flowed through crystal walls like water. Guards watched from a distance, always ready. In the center of it all sat Eli Carter, small and fragile compared to everything around him. He was not treated cruelly. He was given food, rest, and safety, but he was not free. Caliph observed him from above, often without announcing herself. She expected fear, anger, or broken silence. That was what most beings showed when placed under her attention. Eli showed something different. He talked to himself. Sometimes he laughed quietly. Sometimes he sat still, eyes closed, breathing slowly as if calming his own thoughts. This confused Caliph more than any rebellion would have. One cycle she entered the chamber openly. The floor trembled as she approached. Eli stood at once, heart racing, but he did not fall to his knees. "You do not behave as others do," Caliph said. Eli nodded. "I guess I don't know how." She studied him. "You understand that I could end your life without effort." "Yes," he said, "but you haven't." "Why do you think that is?" Eli thought carefully. "Because you don't want to." The answer struck her harder than expected. Caliph turned away, packing slowly. "You assume much for one so small." "Humans assume things," Eli replied gently. "It's how we survive uncertainty." Caliph stopped. No one had ever explained survival to her. Her kind was born strong. Survival was never a question. "You speak often of survival," she said. "Your species struggles greatly." "Yes," Eli admitted. "We lose people, we fail, we break, but we keep going." "Why?" she asked. Eli hesitated. Then he spoke quietly. "Because connection matters more than success." The word lingered in the air. Connection. Caliph felt the hollow space in her chest stir. She had ruled over billions. She had been honored by entire worlds, but she had never felt connected to any of them. They admired her, they feared her, they obeyed her. None of that felt like connection. Over the following cycles, Caliph visited more often. Not always to speak. Sometimes she simply watched as Eli wrote symbols on a thin screen, recording thoughts he might never share. One time she asked, "Why do you write?" "So I don't disappear inside myself," he said. That answer unsettled her deeply. Caliph realized she had been disappearing for centuries. She asked him about Earth. He told her about rain, about crowded cities, about quiet moments with people who understood him without words. His voice softened when he spoke of loss. His eyes dimmed when he spoke of regret. "You carry pain," Caliph observed. "Yes," Eli said, "everyone does." "I do not," she replied automatically. Eli looked up at her. He did not argue, he simply said, "Then why do you feel empty?" The question landed gently and stayed. Caliph left the chamber that cycle feeling unsettled. Her steps were slower. The stars above felt colder. She realized something she had never allowed herself to consider. Power had built her world. Knowledge had expanded it. Victory had protected it. But none of those things had filled the space inside her. A human weak, temporary, and small had spoken to her without fear or worship. And for the first time in her long existence, Caliph felt the beginning of something unfamiliar. Not satisfaction, but awareness. Far below, Eli lay awake, staring at the ceiling of a place not meant for him. He did not know why the Giantess listened. He only knew that when she did, the universe felt slightly less heavy. And somewhere between a giant's silence and a human's fragile voice, a change had begun. Caliph did not sleep as she once had. Even when her immense form rested among the high spires, her mind wandered to the human named Eli. His presence lingered like a faint echo, softer than any music, sharper than any command. She had been accustomed to obedience, to perfection, to the cold order of her world, but Eli's quiet defiance unsettled her. She returned to the chamber that cycle without warning. Eli was not afraid, only calm, as if he expected her. He was sketching something on a thin tablet, a diagram of stars connected by lines, fragile as spiderwebs. Caliph's massive shadow fell over him, but he continued, speaking aloud to himself. "You think the universe is only about strength," he said, "but it's about the moments that make you feel alive." Caliph stopped. He had not addressed her directly, yet she felt as though the words wrapped around her chest like invisible chains, tugging at something buried deep. "What is it you mean?" she asked, lowering her enormous form to study him closely. Her voice, usually capable of moving mountains, softened. Eli paused. I mean, even the strongest need someone to notice them, someone to care. It doesn't matter how tall you are or how much power you hold. If no one sees the real you, it doesn't matter at all. Kalith turned away, her massive shoulders stiff. She walked among the crystal spires, each step echoing in the empty chamber. Her people had admired her, worshipped her, even feared her, but none had ever looked beyond her height, her strength, or her accomplishments. None had asked if she was lonely. She returned the next day, and the day after, and the next. Each time, Eli spoke without hesitation, sharing small truths about his fragile world, about his family, his fears, and even the moments of joy he found in tiny, fleeting things. A warm sunbeam, a shared laugh, the feeling of grass beneath his feet. Kalith listened, not as a ruler listens to a subject, not as a teacher to a student, but as someone learning a language long forgotten, a language that had the power to fill emptiness. One day, she asked him a question she had never dared speak aloud. Do you think even I could feel it? Feel what? Eli asked, glancing up with those steady eyes that made her feel fragile, though she was a giant. Connection, Kalith admitted. I have everything, and yet I feel nothing inside. Eli studied her quietly. Then he reached out a trembling hand. You don't have to understand it fully. You just have to be willing to feel it. It comes slowly, but it comes. For the first time in centuries, Kalith felt a flicker inside her hollow chest, a tiny spark that no star or crystal could create. It was fragile, uncertain, yet alive. The giantess began to change. She walked more slowly, noticing details she had ignored. The soft hum of the energy fields, the subtle sway of the crystal spires, the way light scattered across surfaces. She began to see the small, fleeting things that humans called beautiful. Yet with every spark, the emptiness pressed back, reminding her how long she had walked alone. She wanted to reach out, but she could not. Eli was small, and she feared breaking him unintentionally. The distance between them was literal and impossible, and yet somehow it did not matter. Kalith realized something terrifying. No matter her knowledge, no matter her strength, she was learning humility from a human. The thought should have shamed her. Instead, it ignited a curious warmth she had never felt. Hope. Hope that perhaps she could be more than a ruler. Hope that the hollow space inside her might one day be filled. And hope that a fragile being, no taller than her finger, might show her how to live beyond power, beyond fear, beyond isolation. That cycle, Kalith did not return to her chambers. She stayed above the plains, looking at the artificial stars, and wondered if the spark inside her could grow. She did not know the answer, but for the first time she wanted to find out. Kalith had always believed she was unshakable. Her steps could split mountains, her voice could command fleets, and her mind could calculate the patterns of entire galaxies. Yet the spark Eli had planted inside her chest began to grow in ways she could not control. The more she observed him, the more fragile her certainty became. It began subtly. At first, she noticed the emptiness she carried while walking alone across the crystal plains. Her steps, though still heavy, felt hollow. Even the wind seemed sharper against her skin. Then, during a simulation meant to train her in new strategies for planetary defense, her thoughts kept drifting. She imagined Eli sketching stars, imagined his quiet voice narrating simple truths she could not fully grasp. Her advisors noticed it first. They whispered among themselves about Kalith's distraction, about her unusual pauses. They had never seen her hesitate. Never. But she did. And that hesitation spread like ripples across her world. One day, during a ceremonial alignment of the planetary orbits, a celebration meant to showcase her strength and intelligence, Kalith felt something break. A massive surge of energy that she had controlled for centuries slipped from her grasp. Crystals shattered. Machines overloaded. The sky glowed with an unnatural hue. For the first time, she fell to her knees. Her people panicked. Guards rushed forward, shouting commands. while engineers tried to stabilize the failing energy fields. But nothing worked. Kalith could only feel the hollow emptiness inside her widening, as if the universe itself was echoing her pain. Eli, who had been nearby studying the patterns of the energy fields, ran forward despite the protests of the guards. He moved quickly, careful not to step into danger, but his small human body seemed almost ridiculous compared to Kalith's enormous form. Yet the giantess did not stop him. Her trembling hand rose slightly in acknowledgement, allowing him to approach. "You shouldn't be here," a guard whispered, panic in his voice. Kalith shook her head. "Let him come," she said, her voice a faint tremor barely audible over the chaos. "He is not afraid." Eli reached her enormous form. She looked down at him, expecting hesitation or fear or even failure, but instead he extended a small human hand. "You don't have to be alone," he said softly. "Let me help." Kalith felt a strange warmth spread from where his hand touched her chest. It was not a physical warmth. Her body radiated energies far beyond what a human could influence, but a sensation she had never known: relief. A tiny pressure lifted from her hollow core. The chaos around her seemed to slow. Machines that had been on the brink of collapse stabilized. Crystals hummed with softer light. The giantess trembled, tears of pure energy spilling from her eyes, falling like glowing rain upon the plains. Her people watched in awe, afraid to move. The ground shook beneath her, but there was no rage in her steps, only vulnerability. For the first time in recorded history, Kalith admitted she could be hurt, she could fail, she could feel. Eli stayed. His hand remained on her chest, small against her immense form, but the connection was undeniable. "You don't have to carry it alone," he repeated. "Ever." The hollow space in Kalith's chest did not vanish entirely, but it softened. She could feel it beginning to fill slowly, not with power or victory, but with the quiet understanding that someone small, fragile, human, truly cared. For the first time in her life, Kalith did not stand as a ruler or a giantess. She simply was, kneeling among her people and the stars, letting someone reach her in a way no one else ever could. And that moment, humble, fragile, and unexpected, changed everything. Kalith rose slowly from the plains, her massive form trembling with a new and unfamiliar weight. It was not the weight of duty, nor of victory, nor of knowledge. It was the weight of something far more profound: human connection. The small hand of Eli, pressed lightly against her chest, had done what centuries of admiration and fear never could. It had opened her to feeling. For the first time in her long life, Kalith looked at the galaxy and saw it differently. She noticed details she had always ignored: the subtle shimmer of crystal walls as sunlight passed through them, the way the smallest stars pulsed like distant hearts, the faint hum of life in every creature, no matter how insignificant. She felt them all, not as data to be catalogued, but as experiences to be lived. Eli stayed at her side, speaking softly, telling stories of Earth. He described the way wind could curl through hair, the taste of rain, the quiet satisfaction of helping someone else without expectation of reward. He spoke of loss and hope in the same breath. Every word resonated inside Kalith like a new vibration of her soul. "You are not alone," he said again, his voice calm and steady. "You don't have to be strong all the time, you don't have to be perfect. You just have to exist and someone will notice." Kalith bowed her immense head. No one had ever told her this. Her people had obeyed her, worshipped her, and feared her, but no one had truly seen her. Eli had, and that small act of recognition, that simple touch, had begun to fill the emptiness she had carried for centuries. The energy fields around her, once precise and untouchable, now seemed to move in harmony with her feelings. Her heartbeat, or whatever served as a heartbeat in her alien body, slowed and steadied. The giantess understood something profoundly human for the first time. Vulnerability was not weakness. It was strength. Kalith's people gathered cautiously, unsure how to approach her now. She did not command them. She did not demand attention. She simply allowed them to witness her transformation. Some of them faltered under her gaze, sensing the difference in her presence. She had not changed in size or power, but in essence, she was no longer untouchable. Eli took another small step forward, placing his hand again on her chest. This time, Caliph leaned slightly into his touch, allowing herself to absorb it fully. The giantess who had walked above civilizations now understood the weight and the beauty of something smaller than herself, a human offering care without expectation. "You taught me something I could not learn alone," Caliph admitted quietly. Her voice, immense yet gentle, carried across the plains. "Strength is not enough. Power cannot replace understanding, and victories are empty without someone to share them with." Eli smiled faintly. "And you can teach others too. You can show them that even giants need someone small to remind them of what matters." Caliph looked down at him. She had spent centuries building walls, surrounding herself with power and perfection. Yet here was someone, small and temporary, who had broken through every barrier she had erected, and she had welcomed it. For the first time, she truly felt satisfied, not with accomplishments, not with control, not with conquest, but with the understanding that connection could fill what power never could. She realized the galaxy was not hers to rule alone. It was hers to experience, to share, and to protect in ways she had never imagined. The giantess raised her massive eyes to the artificial stars above. They seemed warmer now, alive in a way they had never been. And in that quiet moment, Caliph understood. Satisfaction did not come from winning or knowing everything. It came from letting someone see you, letting yourself see them, and allowing that recognition to heal what had been hollow for centuries. Eli's hand remained steady on her chest, a symbol of trust, understanding, and the smallest yet most powerful bridge between their worlds. Caliph finally smiled, a deep, luminous expression that shone across the plains. The giantess who had never known satisfaction now did, not because she had achieved more, but because she had been touched by something human, something real, and something lasting. Caliph did not return to her chambers that cycle. Instead, she walked among her people. The crystal cities had never seemed so alive. Every spire, every shard, every light reflected differently now, softer, warmer, more personal. She noticed the small details she had always ignored. The way the wind stirred the energy fields, the faint hum of life vibrating through the streets, the subtle expressions of her citizens' faces as they moved about their tasks. Her people were hesitant at first. The world-bearer, the stormwalker, the living colossus was not known for humility. Yet she moved slowly among them, listening instead of commanding. Her massive eyes, usually cold and calculating, now held warmth. Her presence no longer demanded fear or obedience. It invited trust. She called together the council, not to issue orders but to speak. "For centuries I have ruled as if my strength alone were enough. I have measured power as the measure of worth. I have sought victory over others, yet I was blind," she said. Her voice was immense yet gentle, echoing across the crystal halls. "I have learned that connection matters more than strength, that understanding matters more than command, that care matters more than conquest." Some council members whispered in disbelief. Others bowed cautiously. None had ever seen Caliph speak like this. And yet, there was an undeniable truth in her words, one that resonated even through the crystal walls. Eli stood nearby, small against her towering form but no longer insignificant. Caliph looked down at him, and for a moment the weight of centuries of solitude lifted from her shoulders. She extended her hand, not as a ruler, but as someone who had learned to share space, to share understanding. "You have shown me what I could not find alone," she said. "And you have shown me that even a giant can learn to kneel, not in submission, but in recognition of another being's worth." The council listened in awe as Caliph declared that all humans in their custody were to be freed, not as subjects, but as partners. The other species watching the announcement were skeptical. How could a giant, the most powerful being of her kind, allow herself to learn from something so small? But Caliph's presence radiated a quiet certainty. It was not weakness, it was wisdom. She began to spend her days among the humans, learning their small habits, their fleeting joys, and their unique ways of seeing the universe. In turn, she taught them what they could not imagine: the vastness of space, the mechanics of stars, the patterns that connected entire galaxies. Yet this teaching was no longer one-sided. Caliph listened as much as she spoke, absorbing more than she had in all her previous centuries of knowledge. The citizens of Virlia noticed the change. Wars paused, debates softened, and fear became respect tempered with admiration. The giantess's humility created ripples across her civilization. Giants no longer felt the need to dominate. Empires reconsidered their use of force. The smallest beings, even those once considered insignificant, were seen as bearers of insight, creativity, and courage. One quiet evening, Caliph returned to the high plains, standing beneath the artificial stars. Eli was at her side, pointing out constellations from his home planet. For the first time, she felt the universe not as a series of calculations, nor as a collection of victories, but as a living, breathing network of connections. Every being mattered, every action resonated, every voice counted. Caliph knelt slightly to meet Eli's height, a gesture previously unimaginable. "You have changed more than me," she said softly. "You have changed how we see ourselves, how we see the galaxy, how we see each other." Eli smiled, his small hand brushing hers against her massive chest. It was a gesture of trust, understanding, and friendship. Caliph realized that power alone could never inspire loyalty or love. Only empathy, connection, and shared vulnerability could do that. For the first time, Caliph understood the meaning of being truly alive. She had not only learned from a human, she had learned to feel. And in doing so, she had begun to transform her entire civilization into something stronger, wiser, and infinitely more compassionate. And in that quiet, golden glow of the plains, Caliph, the giantess who had once felt nothing, finally understood what it meant to belong. Years had passed since Caliph first encountered Eli. The galaxy itself seemed to move differently around her now, not because of her power, but because of the understanding she carried within. Her enormous footsteps no longer inspired fear alone, they inspired hope. Her people no longer bowed out of obligation. They sought her guidance, eager to learn how to connect rather than conquer. Caliph stood on the edge of her world, overlooking the endless plains where light shimmered over crystal cities. The artificial stars above glimmered softly, reflecting in her glowing eyes. She thought of Eli, who had returned to Earth long ago, small in stature but monumental in impact. He had taught her that even the mightiest being could need guidance, care, and recognition. The once hollow space in her chest now hummed with warmth. It had not vanished completely, nor was it meant to. That emptiness had been a teacher, reminding her that connection was earned, not commanded. And Eli's touch, a simple gesture of trust, had filled it in ways power never could. Caliph began visiting other worlds, walking among humans and other species alike. She shared stories of her experiences, not as a boast of greatness, but as lessons in humility and understanding. Children stared up at her with awe, not fear, while leaders listened quietly, learning that strength without empathy was empty. One day, a human fleet approached Virlia, unsure of the giantess's intentions. Caliph met them personally, kneeling to speak face-to-face with their leaders, her massive eyes full of warmth. "You are not here to serve me," she said. "You are here to teach me, and in return I will protect and guide. We are equals in the lessons of life." The humans marveled. No giant had ever spoken this way. They felt seen. They felt heard. And in that recognition they found courage. The galaxy watched, and slowly the attitude of fear and submission toward giants began to change. Caliph returned to her plains that evening, standing silently with her gaze on the stars. She remembered every step of her journey, the emptiness that had pressed against her chest, the endless victories that never mattered, and the first small hand that had reached her. Eli's touch had been simple, almost ordinary. Yet it had done what power, fear, and worship could not. It had made her feel. She realized then that satisfaction was not a thing to be seized or achieved. It was a quiet, steady presence that grew when one allowed themselves to connect, to be vulnerable, and to trust. That human had shown her that even the tallest beings need someone small enough to reach their heart. Caliph knelt on the plains, feeling the wind pass through her enormous form. In that moment she was not a ruler, not a conqueror, not even a legend. She was simply Caliph, a giantess who had learned to belong. The galaxy felt smaller, warmer, and infinitely more alive because she had been changed. Her people noticed the shift immediately. No longer did they seek to elevate her with fear or silence. They approached her with questions, with laughter, with ideas. The world itself seemed to respond, the crystal cities glowing brighter, the air humming with a gentle energy that had never existed before. Even distant planets seemed to pulse with life in resonance with her calm presence. And somewhere across the stars, Eli looked up at Virlia, unaware that a simple human act had rewritten the legacy of a giantess. His courage, his honesty, and his quiet touch had not only changed her, they had changed the galaxy. Caliph smiled, a deep, luminous expression that spanned her massive face. The giantess who had once walked alone, hollow and unsatisfied, now carried within her a simple truth. True strength comes not from power, but from connection, empathy, and the courage to be touched by another soul.